Welcome back to the podcast without a name. Today we've got Anna from Happy Maki. Anna, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anna. Happy Maki is my company. I started it about 8 years ago, and we sell healthy fast food in the form of vegan sushi, based primarily in Brighton, but we also do music festival catering as well. And there's a big push behind ethics and sustainability in the business, which I think is one of the reasons why I've been invited here, which is nice. So I think we'll have lots to talk about.
Cool. So when we first met you a few years ago, pre-COVID, one of the things that stuck in my mind about kind of why you set up the company and what sort of got you into being vegan and possibly the start of all of this was your trip somewhere and you were fishing or something like that. what was it? Tell the story better than I can.
Is that your vague memory of a really good story?
Yeah, it was really good until I tried to tell it. What was the inspiration behind the company and what you're doing now?
I think I had a really profound experience in French Polynesia, and I kind of ended up on an organic black pearl farm, which was on an atoll in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And everything they did there was very sustainable or sustainability focused, in that their rainwater was collected, they had solar panels for electricity, and all of their farming practices were kind of designed around regeneration, because oyster farming and pearl farming can be quite destructive to the natural environment if you do certain processes in the wrong way. So I ended up living on that farm in the middle of nowhere for 2 to 3 months, and it was the most kind of like in tune with my environment I've ever been. And they do a lot of spearfishing there, spearfishing and free diving. And when I came home from the trip, my appetite for fish had gone through the roof, but I was buying it packaged on shelves in Tesco or whatnot, and I had no idea where it came from, whereas on the pearl farm you're kind of hand selecting the fish you want to eat. So that led me down a bit of a rabbit hole of research, and I found a particular documentary called End of the Line, and it just highlighted all the horrible practices that are in the kind of commercial fishing industry. I don't know if you guys have seen Seaspiracy, but it was like Seaspiracy but 10 years earlier, when documentaries weren't on Netflix and they weren't as fashionable, but it was saying a lot of very similar things. And I thought, oh my gosh, I call myself an ocean lover, I'm a complete hypocrite, I'm going to have to stop eating fish. And then it was like, well, I don't want to stop eating sushi. And that's kind of where Happy Maki was born. It was the first kind of fish-free sushi company, or that I was aware of. So, yeah.
So on the basis of sustainability, given it's sustainability based, where do you find, how's the benefits of veganism in sustainability?
Essentially, switching from a meat diet, and obviously you can play the numbers how you want, so take it with a pinch of salt, but from a meat diet to vegan diet reduces your carbon footprint by 50%. So it's one of the easiest and most influential decisions you can make if you are concerned about the environment and your effects on it. The other big one is that 51% of global greenhouse gases are from animal agriculture, and 13 are due to transport. So it's a much larger piece of the pie than people realize. And it's not just greenhouse gases, it's water pollution, it's land use, it's habitat destruction. And all of these have they're so intertwined, and they have such a cumulative effect that, yeah, it really is massive. I think it really downplays it to just look at the carbon emissions side of things. There's so many benefits to the environment of choosing a vegan diet.
Yeah, it's such a controversial subject. There's so much conversation going on about both sides at the moment. I've seen anybody that posts a strong opinion on either, it's such a long string of comments underneath on LinkedIn. People really have so much energy for this conversation, I think.
Yeah.
It's very dividing though, isn't it?
It's very dividing.
But we literally said earlier on, the whole idea of this podcast is to kind of expand on those conversations and find middle ground for all of it. I saw a post that had some numbers around the production of animals, and we feed 10 times more animals than there are humans on the planet.
Yeah.
and the amount of calories and protein or something like that go into each of the animals is, and that comes back out. So it's like 100 calories go into feeding a cow, and 20% of that comes out as calories. So it's a hugely
alongside
wasteful.
a load of other bad things.
Yes,
that happen.
Let alone the financial cost, the cost of the land, the water that goes in. There's tons. It's hard to. It's hard to argue against the numbers.
It's
really
hard
to filter out we talk about this quite often as well, is what's driven by corporations, people selling the vegetables, people selling the meat, and everything to do with both products, and how much of the argument comes from these guys. And it's hard to make your own decision on stats and figures and numbers because they're so controversial. Every time one is out there, every time I read a LinkedIn post on one side of the argument, I'm like, yeah, that's really good argument. And I'll start reading the comments and go, that was complete rubbish. These guys have completely debunked that whole point.
Yeah.
And either way, I just don't have solid intel.
Yeah, I think there's two things on that. Like Rich, you were saying, that particular stat of the inefficiency of the food chain, like you can't argue against that. Like it's more efficient just to eat the plant. So that's a really strong one. The second one is something that I really value in life, is the only real evidence is experience. And I think there's a lot of people that are unwilling to give it a go for a year and have an opinion on it. Like the majority of us have been meat eaters, so we can have an opinion on it. But so many people have an opinion on veganism without having experienced it for a fair amount of time. So it's quite hypocritical in a way. And so my kind of thing that I say to people is like, give it a go for a year, like fully experience it and understand it, and then see where your opinion lies, because it's very hard to sit in have experience of one kind of dimension of it and be able to be fully informed without having experienced the other side. But I think it's amazing. I don't know, I think sometimes when you work in the industry, you're in a bit of a bubble, so it's very rare for me to hang out with people, especially at work, that do eat meat. And we see all the positive change because we're constantly hearing all the new products that are coming out. So from my side of things, it seems to be moving very quickly to people reducing meat and cutting it out altogether. So I don't know. For me, it's a fascinating kind of time to be alive, and the next 10 years are going to be so interesting.
Yeah, and I guess the restaurants and especially things like the festival things, they're successful for you guys. So it's proving that you can enjoy food that is good for the planet. It's not a bad thing. Even the meat alternatives, are becoming a lot more advanced, and I don't know, like a fair comparison.
Yeah, you don't feel like you're missing out.
No, and I think that's the hard part to all of it, is that had like 30 odd years, it's ingrained in us, that kind of that need for something, or it's very hard to turn that down.
Yeah.
And we're probably a bit too sheltered from the experience, as you said. If you've experienced something, you can't then turn that off.
Yeah.
You're going to be forced to make some changes.
I think those life lessons, experiences, like the one you were telling earlier, I think not many people get the chance to have those experiences. And I think I think a lot of people don't get that chance. So it's for them, it's just going to a shop and choosing one product or another. Whereas for someone like you, you've got a reason for it. Whereas most people's reasons are because they're being pressured into it. I think maybe more films like Seaspiracy were to come out, people watch them, they have more of a reason and more of a...
It's not the masses, though. I think that's one of the big challenges, isn't it? That we are all relatively aware of what the challenge is and what some of the terrible things, with animal cruelty and that kind of side of things, and even the health side of things. We're aware. We know really what the problem is and why we need to change. We're told about things, but I guess we don't experience them directly enough that we kind of dismiss it. Same as the what was the film last year, the DiCaprio one about the climate change, and it went mad, didn't it? Everyone watched this,
Don't Look Up.
That's it. Yeah. But how many people actually genuinely got affected by that to make a change?
Yeah.
It was interesting. I learnt something, but nothing triggered that next step forward.
Yeah. I mean, I find the behavioral and the emotional side of things fascinating when it comes to veganism because, guys, when I went vegan, it was reluctant. Like, I wasn't particularly joyous about it. I heard the line in Cowspiracy which says, you can't be an environmentalist and still eat meat. And I was like, damn it.
Damn logic.
Yeah, literally. I was so logic driven. And the night before I gave up meat, I gorged. Like, I was on holiday and there was a barbecue. And I think I ate like 10 different types of meat, which now is just a bit embarrassing. But it was a bit like, oh, fine, I'll do this because of that. But in continuing to be vegan and make the choices, and the more you learn, I think with people, there's always an in. So my in was the environment because I had a heartfelt connection to the environment. I cared about the ocean. For some people, it's going to be animals. For some people, they're really into health and fitness. So what you find people doing in the vegan industry is trying to like find those little cracks and like, okay, how can we get in there? And I think the connection to animals one is, it's very tricky because you show people pictures of slaughterhouses and they shut it down, understandably, because it's horrific. But I think there's a lot more interesting work that can be done in that area. And also the human side of things as well is huge. Like, I really don't think people realize, and I definitely didn't realize, that when I was buying meat, I'm subsidizing someone to have to work in that environment 5 days a week. Now, that's not natural. That's not something I would want to do day in, day out. I don't know if you guys have ever been to a slaughterhouse, but it's that kind of thing. It's like there's so many different elements to it that we don't consider because it's uncomfortable. So yeah, I went off on a bit of a tangent there, but the behavioral side of things is fascinating. And it's that feeling of like, oh, if I do this, I'm going to lose a bit of joy in my life. I think that's the biggest thing, is that you think it's going to make your life worse and more limited, but actually it's the complete opposite. And you come out the other end of it and you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I'd done this sooner. And it's you can't explain that to someone until they've been through it, because I was that person. It's like, I don't want to give up steak. I don't want to give up tuna. So that's why I'm always so encouraging of doing the experiment, because you just don't know how you're going to feel until you've done it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think I don't think I can not do it. I feel like I have to give it a go. And I think massively changed personally anyway when we started to work with yourself and one of our other clients. The One Planet Pizza guys.
Oh yeah, they're nice guys.
And yeah, you just with us, we just absorb knowledge and want to get involved and understand people. And I think when you were talking about your journey to this and obviously the food you guys produce and stuff, it definitely makes it easier. Definitely changes that conversation.
Yeah.
I think. Is it the Veganuary?
Yep.
I think
Coming
I might
up.
be giving that a go this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bold move. It's a whole month.
Yeah.
You might die.
I could do with losing a few pounds, so as long as it's healthy, it's all good.
Yeah.
But I think it's I don't think I can not do it and try it properly. And I agree. I think I will find that it's doable quite easily.
Yeah.
But I have definitely changed a lot of my diet and picked up a lot of stuff that is more vegan friendly. I don't know what's vegan friendly and what's just vegan. Is it the same thing?
Friendly to vegans is probably just vegan food, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Same thing, I think, technically.
Yeah. It should be, shouldn't it?
Should we talk about your gift economy in your restaurants?
Yeah, sure.
How you're charging?
So ethics to me is such a fascinating topic, because it's, yes, we're a vegan company, but that's really only a small piece of the pie, a small part of the puzzle. The way we treat each other and humans is just as important, and there's so much that goes into running a business that is about that, from the employees as well as the customers. So about, I think it's 2 years ago now or so, I decided to give the concept of gift economy a go, which is how we met, because when you have also known as kind of like pay-as-you-feel models in a restaurant, traditionally it's been like a cash exchange at the counter or a donation box on the side. But I knew that our model works on fast transactions, where fast food, it's high output. And so I was looking to create the first digital version of like a self-service donation till system. And it was just through a friend of a friend, wasn't it? That we ended up chatting. So it's been amazing working with you guys on that. And it's been a really interesting process, because I think when you're doing something you're kind of trailblazing, you're learning as you go. And it's like every couple of months or so, there's like improvements we can be doing and feeding back off how the customers are reacting to the till and to the concept and to the communication. It's been a fascinating process, but essentially the ethics behind it is it's all about getting people to engage their will. So I think a lot of the time when people see pay as you feel, they're like, oh, it's about helping the poor people in the community get access to cheap food, which there's some amazing charities in Brighton that do that. But for me, that's not the moral imperative behind the gift economy experiment. It's about the exact emotional exchange that goes on when you say to someone, okay, you can't have this food until you pay us this price, versus we'd love you to have the food. This is how much it cost us to make it, and you making a conscious choice to support us. It's a much more beautiful exchange than the kind of mindless tap or doing things because we're forced to by law. Essentially, that's what a price tag is. It's saying you can't have this unless you buy it. So
we find that whole concept really interesting. And I think ever since working with you, when we first started working with you, we had our doubts on the whole thing. And we just didn't think it was going to work. And like, you're going to get people coming in and just never paying for things. And
yeah, which we did. We had a lot of that.
But you've persevered and you've seen it through. And I'm so glad you have, because I really wanted it to work. I wanted the concept to work.
Yeah. And it's very similar to so many parallels to what I was saying about giving veganism a go. Like, you start and you're like, okay, we have all these doubts. There's going to be people that take advantage. There's going to be this, there's going to be that. But you just can't envisage how it's going to work out until you do it, because there are a lot of fears going into it. But I've got, as you guys probably know, a really strong faith in that, okay, well, if we're designing something around creating a kinder exchange, then it's going to work out eventually, because I feel like we're all kind of hardwired for that. But it might just be a bit of a squiggly path on the way. And like, I had a lot of lessons to learn. Like, we let people take advantage of us for too long, because that kind of comes down to not valuing self, I guess. And I was like, maybe I'm just not explaining it well enough. And I'd get and we had to improve the way we communicated it, because it's a radical concept and you've got a very short amount of time at the till. And it's also can be very triggering for people. Like, money is triggering, and not everyone has the same experience. But yeah, it took me a while to be like, okay, no, it's not a bad thing to put a limiter in place, which is what we've got now, is that at the moment people can only discount their food 15%, but they can give as much extra as they want. And that taught me a lot about you've got to be realistic with who you're working with. So we had a lot of college students, and it's not fair just to let them kind of run amok. That doesn't help anyone. So it's about putting the boundaries in, but still educating like what the reasoning behind it is, because I think that's really important. There's a beautiful message behind gift economy, and it's just it's turned into an education project. But yeah, it's been a fascinating process.
Because it's quite rare. I've never heard of. Well, actually, there was one other person I heard of doing a similar thing. It might be someone that you told me about that were doing a similar gift economy, and even working with the Square Terminal company, making the point of sale app. They were saying to me, because we've had quite a good communication during the development, and they were saying to me, we've never had this before. We'd actually like to look at your code to see how we can improve what we're doing to make it better for this type of sale.
See, and it's all those ripple effects, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was a brilliant learning curve. or it still is, from a technical perspective, an experience and design perspective in terms of that interaction with people, and as you say, learning how people accept the concept and then work with that in a short space of time. But I think the big thing and the overarching theme to that is that gift part, and as you say, the social interaction and perception of value with the food and how people appreciate that or deal with it. That's the big thing out of it that's worked. And I guess over time, obviously it's been about, is it 3 years or so now? Must be close to that.
I think it's between 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Oh, I should know.
Yeah.
It's all a blur.
So I guess you know, maybe the reputation or the tweaks and things have just kind of built up that momentum for it to work at the right level for people.
Not only are you gifting food to people, and for a very long time allowing them to pay anything from nothing to as much as they like, you're also gifting trees and meals with some purchases.
So yeah, whenever you buy a main meal from us, so that's like a sushi burrito or a bowl, we plant a tree and feed a child, and that's a huge part of sustainability for the company. Obviously, tree planting is kind of self-explanatory, but also there's still over 10,000 kids a day dying from hunger and hunger-related diseases, which in the world where we have enough food to feed everyone, and we have these inefficient food systems that involve animal agriculture, like, it's madness. Like, I honestly think we'll look back on this and be like, what were we doing? It's horrendous. So it's a charity, Mary's Meals, that do the feeding of the children in 26 different countries. They're feeding over 2 million kids a day. It's very close to my heart, and I just think it's such a beautiful thing to sit down. Anytime you're eating from us, you can kind of envisage that person next to you having a meal as well. And they do it in places of education, so it's all about rebuilding these communities, a lot of which are the way they are because of the way we in the West have kind of designed things and chosen to live our lives. It's a school feeding program, so the kids are getting educated at the same time, and they're using local resources, which boosts the local economy, and it's just a really beautiful model. It's a very, very clever model, but that also has kindness at the heart of it, and integrity and respect. So yeah, big shout out to Mary's Meals, because they're incredible for the work they do. But yeah, I think it's one thing I wanted to touch on today is, like, sustainability as a word. We often think about very materialistic things in the environment, but I feel there's this whole other side of things, which is like emotional sustainability. There's only so much we can take, and there's so much positives that can be done from investing in people emotionally, because I feel like when you're happy, you make better choices. So although you might not directly be investing in something that you could calculate the carbon emissions of, if we treat people more kindly, that will have a ripple effect that is linked to sustainability. Impossible to measure, but very important, I think. It's a similar thing when you get into a good routine of food and exercise. It's so much easier to make that choice again. And then as soon as you get out of it, it seems like the hardest thing in the world to make a salad. So, yeah, it's... I think emotional sustainability is a very interesting topic that's kind of under-discussed.
Yeah.
I think I coined it on the train on the way up. I was like, I need to Google it to see who exists already.
That's really good. Yeah.
Heard it here first. No, I completely agree, though. You can see it, can't you, when if you've had a night out and you're feeling hungover. They say, who's making a salad?
Yeah.
When you're hungover, you're not, are you? It's bad decisions, and it's...
It's options at certain times as well, options for things. So using drinking as an example, if you're out drinking or even just out late, the food options later in the evening are much not as good for you.
Yeah, it's true. You make very bad decisions at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe it's not the alcohol's making the decisions though. Maybe it's the options that are leading us to a bad place.
It's probably like really deep kind of neurological stuff going in the brain, isn't it? Sort of the fight or
Bit both,
flight
maybe.
caveman mentality of survival,
Yeah.
and it's just an instinct. And I think that's the part, as we said earlier, like trying to change that habit of what your body wants and what you think it wants at that time is the big
Yeah.
That's a
thing,
good-
and it's a very emotional connection.
I suppose that brings it down to the festivals that you do. So most people, some people may be drunk at festivals, and you still have huge amount of customers, right?
Yeah.
So people in that circumstance, unlike us choosing a kebab late at night, are choosing vegan sushi.
Yeah. I mean, we don't stay open too late. Some of the brands that do well from your kind of 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. are what you'd expect.
Right.
We just don't bother with that. I don't want.
That's a shame. I was hoping you'd say, yeah, we're giving people the
I
option.
think. Do you know if we did, we'd sell.
Yeah.
We would sell. I think I've managed to find quite a good balance between filling and healthy, and you still feel like it's full of flavor and comfort food, but it's still healthy at the same time.
I wonder if there's a connection also with people that are conscious about their health and eating vegan food are probably not up until 4 a.m. drinking alcohol.
Yeah, there's definitely a correlation, I think, with that.
That Venn diagram's got a very small piece in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay. What's so in terms of the restaurants and even with the festivals, what are you guys doing sustainably that you could share with us? Is there anything you do on a daily basis, or have any policies in place?
So what do we do that's sustainable? We use 100% green energy from Ecotricity. We use bagasse. I'm not even sure if that's how you pronounce it, but it's the kind of material that looks a bit like bedpans used to look like in the hospitals. Like
Cardboardy.
yeah,
recycled
reconstituted cardboard. Yeah. And then we also use these side boxes from a company called Notpla, who use seaweed technology to create plastic-like linings for food boxes. And they've just won the Prince's Earthshot Prize for £1 million to grow their business. So
Nice.
that's a shout out to them, because what they do is really cool as well. They do kind of not just side boxes, but any form of liquid that can be contained in this plastic film, but it's edible. So sometimes you'll see it at marathons. They've got like energy shot gels in it, and you just eat the whole thing. Or like olive oil for cooking, and you can just chuck it in. So that's interesting technology based from seaweed, because obviously seaweed's a good resource to be using. Zero to landfill we do, which means our food waste goes to like a kind of biofuel generator. It goes and gets turned into liquid fertilizer for farming. Some of our waste goes to an incinerator, which is better than going to landfill. And then a lot of it's recycled. So those are like our three main streams. But basically our general waste goes to incinerator, which provides electricity for the local area. I think it's in New Haven, down just outside of Brighton. Because we make our food to order, we have very low food waste. So some companies will throw away a lot, especially the festivals. Like if they don't sell what they've bought, then a lot can get chucked. But we don't really have that issue. So I think compared to other food companies, we do really well on food waste, which is good for cost savings as well, not just sustainability wise. And then obviously we plant the trees, which is a big thing. But yeah, those are kind of like our main environmental things that we do. And the biggest thing is the fact that the menu's fully vegan. So that's where we're saving the most carbon emissions.
Have you got any significant challenges that you're still trying to solve at the moment? Is there any chink in the armour as such?
I'd love the packaging to be 100% compostable, which at the moment we have the little side sauce, the plant plastics, but it's all very dependent upon what your local council is doing with that. So it's better than plastic, but it needs to be like industrially composted. And at the moment, Brighton and Hove, which might surprise you, doesn't have a food waste collection system. So
I've read an article about this recently, about the different recycling of different plastics, and the composting of different compostables. So it's not as simple as being able to throw your tea bags onto the compost heap. There's different types of compostability, where you have some things, like you're saying, have to be taken to a professional industrial compost place heap, where it's done with like enzymes and things like that. So although it's better, you still can't throw it on your compost heap and use it in the garden. And I think there's like 3 or 4 different levels of these things. And then there's recyclability as well. Obviously, we know the different types of recycling. You can do plastic, glass, but then plastics, there's 4 or 5 different types of plastics that have to be recycled in different ways, and they all have to be separated. It's a huge thing.
Yeah.
It's not like...
It's not simple.
It's not simple. You don't just chuck it in the box, the guys take it away, and
No.
it happens.
It feels like it could be simple.
Oh, it could be so simple. I
If we
feel.
just all agreed what plastic we were going to use.
Oh, so it was 3 types or something.
Yeah, and
It's
then
just
we all
like down to
recycled
us.
all of them in the right way.
We just need to accept that things are going to get old. Why do we need a tray that we get food in to last so long? It only has to last the 8 minutes it takes us to eat the meal.
Or keep it all reusable.
No, we tried that and everyone just chucks it in the bin.
but then habits need to change. Don't
Yeah,
they?
it's us. We need to just accept that food gets eaten in 8 minutes, so the tray only needs to last 10.
Yeah. I think we spoke about this when we was in here last time, about convenience. And actually convenience is causing a lot of the problems that we're
addicted
we're
to
now
convenience.
trying to solve. Yeah.
That's one of the notes I made before the meeting, is like talking about food wastage. And it's like, well, how can we reduce it? We need to lower our expectations of what is going to be available to us at the end of a day in a shop. Like, it has to be normal to sell out, whereas you're taught the complete opposite. As a business, like, you don't lose those customers, and yeah, we're very addicted to convenience, and I think that's only getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
But again, I think that comes back to the fact that we get so much of our pleasure from food, and we get arsey when we don't get what we want at the end of a long day, when we're stressed, and you want that one thing that's going to make you feel better, and can't have it, and then we're like the toddlers having their tantrum.
Yeah.
That's true.
If someone doesn't say the word takeaway, it's,
Yeah. But going back to the plastics, it's crazy. Like, we did a full remit of all of our packaging, and I was sat there like with 3 different plastic options, and then figuring out from the council, but if we use this, they don't recycle it, but then it's less bad for the environment. And like, honestly, it was really, really tricky. And then you've got to build in, like, we recently switched to using full Bagasse bowls, so Bagasse base and Bagasse lid, but they sometimes come off, and so sometimes someone's Deliveroo arrives and the food's all spilt, and that's not all right. So I think we're going to have to go back to using plastic lids. So there's just a lot of factors to consider. But I always tell myself, like, if we all just stay in our fields and our passions and work on, someone eventually is going to solve the plastic problem. But I don't know about you guys. I get bogged down, and I'm like, well, this needs to be improved, and this needs to be improved, and it's like there will be people.
And you go down those paths for a little bit and think, oh, we should make this packaging, we should make this thing. We come up with all ideas about these sort of things. We talked about it last week about doing a Christmas card alternative. We haven't got time for that. We've got a job to do. But you go down these paths, and you could spend your life trying to fix all the little micro problems in your life.
Well, because we've made such a mess, there's so many potentials for like solutions and new businesses that provide those solutions. So I think if, like you guys, you're into ideas and like creating things, it's tempting, isn't it, to be like, oh, we could do this, we could do that.
So distracting.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it comes down to just trying to do something positive and make the best decisions you can in that moment. And I think if you try to bog yourself down with getting it perfect, you end up not doing anything, and it's worse. So I think it's interesting to hear all the different things though that are going on there. I have no idea of all these different levels of packaging, and annoyingly the combination of things that don't quite work. And it's great to hear that you thinking about the sort of the local council and what they're recycling and where that can be done. And there's only so much you can affect the wider picture, but you're doing as much as you can. And
it's really, I find it tricky not to throw the baby out with the bathwater and be like, well, we shouldn't expand because we're just contributing to more. plastic. Like, you just can't think like that, because the good that we do on the other side of things so outweighs that.
Yeah.
And it's easy to get sucked into like perfectionism of all.
The good you do is definitely outweighs
Yeah.
the negative points that are a consequence of the good things you're doing, for sure. I see 95% good. It's way better than most.
Yeah.
My local Thai food restaurant, we laughed the other day, we had a takeaway and it came in the plastic, the usual plastic shallow trays with a lid on top, then cling film wrapped, and then tinfoil wrapped, and then in a plastic bag, and then in a paper bag. And that's how it was delivered.
But that'll be what I find so fascinating, is like all of this stuff, so much of it is response to the individual's demands. So that'll be because it sometimes spills and sometimes arrives cold, and sometimes, so a lot of that's just avoiding complaints and trying to provide a good service, and there not being any other options. And yeah, if you don't have the customers, and you can't run a business, so it's this whole like very strange catch-22 of
we also want that convenience at a cheap cost as well. With that constantly, we're constantly pushing prices down, because
it's a real problem with food.
Yeah.
Is that we feel like we're getting one up if we get cheap food. That's been a huge factor in the gift economy thing, is that we are, thanks to the bog off offers in the supermarket and many other things, like, and I still fall kind of victim to it as well. You know, you're on Deliveroo and it's 40% off. You're like, oh wow, this is awesome. But no, it's not, because that restaurant's having to pay that 40% to try and they're doing the offer because they're trying to keep going. Yeah. So I think we need to there needs to be a whole repositioning of how we think about and value food. And yeah, obviously that's come a lot into the gift economy side of things, but it's trying to change a whole mindset of a country. I think it's a countrywide thing. Probably a Western-wide thing of cheap food is good. You've done well if you can get access to cheap food.
Yeah.
Tell me about your ingredients. The reason I ask is because we talked earlier about vegan alternatives, and I've dabbled in veganism. I'm not anywhere near being a vegan, but something that bothered me was the amount of ingredients that go into a meat alternative.
Yeah, that's been in the news recently, hasn't it? With
I know I've cooked vegan. I mean, Beyond Meat is a whole nother level of chemistry that I don't understand. But just even simple ingredients that are using, say, instead of eggs, a lot of oil, which has reasons not to have. There are reasons not to have so much oil in your diet as well. So when we try and cook vegan, we always just use simple ingredients, and if we're putting too much of something in, you know, if it's 95% mushrooms, think, do I want to eat this many mushrooms? I want a whole punnet of mushrooms each. Like, is this too much?
Yeah.
So then we might not do that recipe. We'll try and keep it just sort of what you would normally eat on a plate,
More natural.
Just more natural. Just if you grew it in the garden and you pulled up one carrot and one other thing and one, what would you have on your plate? Make a meal out of that, rather than trying to crash 1,000 mushrooms into a burger shape and convince yourself it's a lump of meat.
Yeah.
I think. What is it you're doing?
Not that.
This is really,
Hopefully. No, I think I'm very much whole foods, plant-based, is that you want to be eating well and healthily, and like you say, using vegetables. Like, vegetables in their natural form are amazing. And this is one of the things I found from going from being a meat eater to a vegan, is that your taste buds do change. And so you then can then come to enjoy meals like that in a completely different way, that they wouldn't have tasted like they did when you had meat heavy diet, if you know what I mean. But I think at Happy Maki, what we try and do is we try and find the balance, because it was like I was saying earlier about finding the cracks. So if someone's like, I'm not going to eat a vegan duck roll unless it tastes like duck, then you want to be able to provide something that is like, okay, you know, there is an alternative. But at the same time, have a look at this loaded miso on our menu, which has shiitake mushrooms and sprouts in it, or our beaten basil satay with no processed mock meats in it. So our menu's like half basically, just veggie based, and then there's the mock meat options. Now they sell a lot more than the veggie stuff, but out of principle I'll always have that there because I see it as okay, people might come for the fully loaded, but if we can be part of that journey of them the next time choosing to have a healthier meal from us. Like you can come in and you can have a fully raw vegan meal. So you can have a green juice, a Rawson bowl, and a raw chocolate brownie. That's something I'm very passionate about, is like catering to both sides of the market and being that kind of like transition phase between coming in and just wanting deep fried popcorn, which is delicious. Like, and I still have it. I'm not like anti that, but it's looking at the number of times you're making that choice versus the other choice. So yeah, I'm not terribly keen on the like gluten heavy mock meat deep fried stuff. I don't think you feel good after it. But if it's saving a life, then I'm never going to say it's a bad idea, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it makes sense. So what is the big plan? What's the next steps for Happy Maki? When are you going to take over the world?
We're at a bit of a crossroads because at the moment, I don't think I'm the person to do that job. I don't know if that's right or wrong. That's just how I feel about it. I don't think that's where my strengths lie. But other people might say differently. I'm not sure. I think the scope in the business is like huge, but I also think that's what's intimidating for me. I'm like, I feel like I'm a bit of a crossroads as to like, okay, is this going to be what I want to spend my time focusing on for the rest of my life? Because that could very easily be it. I think, like we were talking earlier about the possible expansions into London, into dark kitchens and stuff. Like the product tastes good, people love it when they eat it, and there could be Happy Makis all over the world that I think would do well. And I think that the delivery market's only growing, the healthy market's only growing, the vegan market's only growing. So yeah, the scope is pretty cool. So I think our next kind of small step, which doesn't actually seem like that small step, is trying out maybe a dark kitchen in London and seeing how that goes. We don't have the funds to open up another store, and up until this point I've never gone down getting the investment route. Something about spending other people's money scares me way more than spending my own money. And I have so many other friends with vegan businesses who are like, yeah, it's great. So much less pressure, which I'm like, I can see that, but I don't know. I find it quite daunting. So I think we've spent the last 2 years very much with our heads down of like, okay, how can we build a takeaway model and a restaurant model that is run on gift economy and that is like tight when it comes to systems and policies and the way we want to run things. And so there's this other option, which is creating a not-for-profit ethical franchise, which I think is really interesting. Like, I can see it exploding if we got that right, if you know what I mean. So that excites me.
What is that? Tell me more.
So it would be the idea similar to what McDonald's have done, except to open up a McDonald's store, you need to pay them like 60 grand up front. A lot of the time, you're like, McDonald's is a property company, essentially. They own a lot of the buildings and then they sublet them to their franchisees. Franchisees? Is that the right word? So they have large setup fees, which can be a barrier to people setting up a franchise. And they also, I believe they take quite a lot each month. Whereas if you were to build a model that was not for profit and didn't have that large setup fee, but just had like a monthly maintenance fee or like rental fee of the brand and the recipes, then it becomes a lot more manageable and it opens up the doors to people to run their own business that might not have had access to that large chunk of upfront cash. And it's also putting faith in other people that they can replicate what you've done and do it well and be driven by the same things that we're driven by, which is spreading veganism, healthy food, and supporting the charities that we support. So, yeah, I mean, I have no idea what that looks like. And the thought of doing the legal paperwork behind it all makes me feel sick.
I can definitely see this growing, and I can definitely see it expanding.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it's just for you to find the best way of doing it, I guess.
Sometimes I feel like, man, if there was someone that wanted to take this and run with it, I'd happily let that happen. But it's so tricky because we're so like ethically and morally driven. It's very easy for it to go off course and lose. I don't know. Have you guys seen The Founder?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It's such a great example, isn't
Yeah.
it? Like, I don't think that would happen, but yeah, it would have to be very well laid out legally about like what it was about and what was okay and what was not okay. But
it would be
Yeah.
great to see. I think that when you know, we spent the last hour talking about it, to have a wider impact on people's lives, health wise, you know, sustainability wise, to support different communities around the country, you know, employing more people, you know, supporting them in
that's the
those
thing.
ways, that kind of the well-being side of all of it. I think we come back to this every now and then, you know, talking about how big we need to be to make a bigger impact. And I think from the ethical side comes down to, you know, we're not just trying to do this to make more money for ourselves. You know, we want to work with more people. We want to do bigger projects because it can have a bigger effect on everything else. You know, like the web has got a certain amount of reach, but every business pretty much will have a digital part to what they do. So if we can help them to do their thing and expand that out as much as possible, then we can have a really good reach. You know, and the same for you, to have as many locations as physically possible is only going to add and create more
Yeah.
positive
More good.
impact.
And it
Yeah.
gives people the opportunity to make better choices. Whether if there's one locally to them, they can make the better choice.
Exactly.
And
Yeah,
supporting you means that you're being able to do all of the
Yeah.
positive things that you're doing, and it grows.
It grows and grows and
If,
grows.
if I was closer to Brighton, I'd be in every couple of weeks. the cauliflower, was that the popcorn?
Yeah.
That was.
That's the unhealthy one. That's just saying you shouldn't.
Oh, was
have.
that what it?
No, but it's good. It's good. It's
I
not that bad.
I did try.
It's not that
You
bad.
need to work on it. Get them on the raw bowls.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. It's interesting. And like I was saying, we've very much had our head down, and I kind of think as well, there's part of me that's like, oh, we should grow, and then there's other parts of me that's like, no, if we can just really get down into the details and be a model of this is how you can run a food business. And like transparency is one of the big elements of what we do, and part of the ethics too, is we can share that. And that's what I love about the gift economy too. It's like we're getting closer and closer to the point where we might in the next few years have a product that if anyone wants to run their retail shop on gift economy, they could download the gift economy app, customize it, and off they go. That's cool.
Yeah.
Like, and that's just, you know, that's
But that's you in a whole as well, because you even want to give away the till system. You just want to give
you wouldn't be
everything
interested
away.
in gift economy if you were like, oh no, how much can we sell it for?
But that's your whole ethos, isn't it? Everything
Yeah.
that you feel valuable, you want other people to have and share an experience like you have as
Yeah.
well.
But
I
that
think it's
feels
wonderful.
good to me. And I think that ties into the veganism thing, is that before I was quite like not financially driven, but it didn't feel safe to be that generous with things, and challenging that, you come at the other end and you're like, oh, it actually feels better not to be getting the bargain and not to constantly be trying to, like, TK Maxx used to be my favorite shop for that very reason, because I thought I was winning every time I went in there. But it's not the truth.
It's at someone else's expense.
Yeah,
Almost.
kind of.
Yeah.
But I get a lot more joy now from saving up and spending more money on a vegan Patagonia jacket, you know, like, because I really love that company and I really love what they represent far more than spending an hour in TK Maxx trying to find something that you like, kind of thing. So it's just about, learning and changing with it all.
We better wrap it up. So thank you very much for coming.
Nice.
joining
That was
us
really
and having
easy,
a
wasn't it?
Really
There's
good
lots
chat. It was
to talk
easy,
about.
yeah. We make it easy.
We're very, very professional. Well, I think someone said we're the Anton Deck of the
Oh my
podcast
gosh,
world.
I love that.
No one said that. No one has said that. Well, thank you very much.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much for having
First
me.
ever guest.
First guest.
Yay!
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
See you next week.
Yeah, next week, 2 weeks, whatever. And you get to witness our very famous sign-offs.
Yeah. What, that just there?
Yeah, no. We got.
Oh,
ciao
you
for-
do an actual one?
Yeah.
We do a proper
Okay.
one.
Yeah, go on. Ciao for now.
I'm not going to say it. I want to get rid of it. See you soon.
That's not as good as ciao for now. That's it. Done.
Nice.